A solitary figure on the open sea, Keanu Reeves steered his sailboat into the unknown. The vast ocean stretched endlessly around him, its waters calm, almost unnervingly still. The sky above was a soft, unbroken blue, and the air was thick with salt, carrying only the sounds of the wind and the waves. For Keanu, this journey was about more than just escape. It was a search for peace, a chance to reconnect with himself, away from the distractions of the world. As the boat cut through the water, a sense of serenity settled over him. The endless horizon promised freedom, a break from the chaos of life. Yet, as the hours passed, a slight unease began to stir in his gut. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was waiting just beyond his sight, lurking out there in the vastness. Want to know what happens next? Is the island the answer to his unease or the beginning of a terrifying journey? Subscribe now to follow Keanu's adventure and don't miss the twists that are about to unfold. Then, the stillness was broken. In the distance, rising from the ocean like a wisp of smoke, was the faint outline of an island. Keanu squinted into the sunlight, the haze of the distance making it hard to see clearly. But the smoke, it was unmistakable. Dark, curling clouds drifting upward, hinting at something unusual. He hesitated, curiosity gnawing at him. Islands like this were rare, uncharted, unknown. What could be waiting on that island? As the wind shifted, pushing him closer, Keanu couldn't shake the feeling that this seemingly peaceful haven held secrets that might change everything. And he was about to uncover them. The boat glided closer to the island, its silhouette growing larger against the horizon. The smoke was now a clear signal. Someone or something was there. Keanu adjusted the sail, his thoughts racing as he neared the shore. What he thought might be an empty island turned out to be anything but. As he neared the beach, he spotted them, figures moving in the shadows of the trees. A family struggling to survive. A father, his face weathered and worn from days of exposure, stood next to a heavily pregnant mother, her hands cradling her swollen belly. 5 children, the youngest no older than 6, huddled close to her, their eyes wide with fear. The scene was heart-wrenching. Their clothes were torn, their bodies thin from hunger and exhaustion. It was clear they had been stranded for days, maybe longer, since their boat capsized in the open waters. They had swum to the island, barely clinging to life. "Please, help us," the father's voice cracked as he spoke, barely audible above the sound of the waves crashing on the shore. Keanu's heart clenched. He couldn't turn away. This was no longer just a story of adventure, it was about survival. The family was desperate, their hope fading with each passing hour. The father explained how the island, once their salvation, had turned into a prison. Every attempt to signal for help had been met with silence. The food they had gathered was scarce, and they could hear whispers in the wind, like something or someone was watching them. Without hesitation, Keanu made his decision. He knew the risks. He knew that the island could be hiding dangers unknown, but the choice was clear. He would help them escape no matter the cost. The island was far from welcoming. The closer Keanu got, the more oppressive the atmosphere seemed to become. Dense jungle stretched ahead, its thick trees looming like silent sentinels. There was no welcoming breeze, no reassuring sounds of wildlife. The air felt heavy, suffocating as though the land itself was holding its breath. Keanu felt a chill creep up his spine, a sense that something was wrong. The shadows in the jungle were deep, too deep for daylight. As he helped the family gather what little they could, he began to notice strange markings etched into the trees, runes, symbols, signs that spoke of something ancient, something forgotten. It was as if the land was alive, haunted by something far older than the island itself. But what was it? The family spoke in hushed tones about the tribe that once lived here, a tribe of Red Indians, long since gone, or so they thought. The mother, her voice trembling, spoke of a time when the tribe's people had ruled the island with a dark and powerful presence. They practiced rituals, old and forbidden, that twisted the very nature of the land. "They've never left," the father whispered one night. his eyes darting around nervously. "They still watch, and they don't want us here." Keanu listened intently, unsure of what to make of it. The family had seen strange figures at night, cloaked in the shadows. They had heard chanting, a low rhythmic sound that seemed to come from deep within the island. Was it the tribe, still guarding their land from intruders? Or was there something more sinister at play? As Keanu explored the island further, he felt an unsettling presence, a constant awareness that he was being watched. The hair on the back of his neck stood on end. The deeper he went, the more he felt the island's history weighing down on him. The family's fear was real. This island wasn't just dangerous, it was cursed, haunted by the spirits of the past, trapped in a cycle of anger and revenge. But what exactly had happened here, all those years ago? And could they ever escape the island's grip? The truth was slipping further away with each step. Was the island truly alive with evil, or was something else at work? Something even more terrifying than a tribe's ancient vengeance. As the days dragged on, Keanu sat with the family, hearing the story of their horrifying ordeal. The father, a man who had once been strong, now seemed fragile, his eyes haunted by the memories of what they had endured. His voice broke as he spoke about the first night they arrived on the island. "It wasn't just the isolation," he explained, his hands trembling. "We began hearing things, whispers, chants, from deep in the jungle. We thought it was just the wind at first. But then, we saw them, shadows moving between the trees." The mother, her face pale and drawn from exhaustion, nodded solemnly. Her pregnancy, now advanced, added another layer of difficulty. The constant strain of survival, coupled with the stress of being isolated, was taking its toll on her health. The weight of her condition was a visible burden, and it seemed to make every moment more urgent. "I'm scared," she confessed quietly, her hand resting over her swollen belly. "Not for me, but for my children. Every night, it feels like the shadows are closing in on us. We've seen people, figures lurking in the dark. They disappear when we try to get close." The children, who had once been playful and full of life, were now eerily silent. Their eyes constantly darted around as though they were never fully able to relax. The youngest clung to their mother, the older children looking to their father for protection. "What happened to the others?" Keanu asked, his voice soft but pressing. The father hesitated, his eyes dropping to the ground. "Some were taken, vanished in the night without a trace. We tried to look for them, but the island's too vast, and those whispers, they follow us no matter where we go." Keanu's heart sank. He could see how broken they all were, physically and mentally. The fear had taken root in their hearts, and it was slowly eroding their will to fight. He knew they needed help, but more than that, they needed hope, and it was his job to give it to them. He couldn't, in good conscience, leave them here to face whatever evil haunted the island. But helping them wouldn't be easy. The island was as much a trap as it was a place of survival. Every time they thought they'd made progress, the island seemed to push back, with strange happenings keeping them on edge. How could Keanu protect them from something that was always watching? And how could he lead them to safety when every step forward felt like a step deeper into danger? Keanu felt the weight of the responsibility. The family was counting on him now, and he couldn't afford to fail them. His resolve solidified. He would get them out of this place, no matter what it took. Keanu's mind raced as he paced the small clearing near the family's shelter. The island was both beautiful and terrifying, with its thick jungle and hidden dangers. But beneath the surface, it was clear. This island held secrets, dark secrets, and the key to getting the family out lay somewhere within those shadows. He couldn't just rush in blindly. He needed to understand the island, its dangers, and the tribe that lived here. So, he began his careful exploration, making sure to move silently, staying out of sight of any potential patrols. Every step he took, every rustling of leaves, seemed to echo in the stillness of the island, as if the land itself was listening. As he ventured deeper into the jungle, Keanu felt an eerie chill. The trees seemed to close in around him, their leaves whispering as if they were trying to tell him something. But there was no time for listening to the wind. Keanu's focus was on finding a way out. He needed an escape route, one that didn't involve running into the tribe. He stumbled upon a narrow path hidden beneath the thick underbrush, barely wide enough for him to squeeze through. It was a path that seemed to lead nowhere, disappearing into the dense jungle. But that was the point. It was secluded, out of sight from the main areas where the tribe wandered. This could be their way out. But was it safe? Keanu couldn't be sure. The island's secrets were not easily unlocked, and every turn he made seemed to reveal more questions than answers. Who were the figures the family saw in the shadows? Were they real, or part of some strange ritual? And why did the tribe, if they were indeed watching, not come after him yet? Keanu spent the next few days carefully mapping out the island's terrain, avoiding the tribe's patrols. He had to move like a ghost, slipping through the trees and underbrush without making a sound. Each time he found a new potential escape route, he would test it, moving cautiously, checking for any signs of danger. His every move was calculated, deliberate, with only the family's survival in mind. The more Keanu observed the tribe, the more he understood the nature of their power. They didn't need to chase their enemies. They could manipulate the land itself, using the shadows to conceal their movements. The deeper Keanu went into the island, the more he felt the tribe's presence, as if the very earth was alive with their ancient energy. But despite the danger, Keanu knew he couldn't back down. The family's trust in him was growing, especially as they saw him risking his own safety to ensure their survival. They had started to believe just a little that escape was possible. They watched him with hope in their eyes, their silent faith in him becoming his own source of strength. Keanu couldn't let them down. In the quiet moments, as Keanu sat with the family, he thought about their lives before the island. Had they been ordinary people with dreams and ambitions like anyone else? Or had the island already claimed them before they even set foot on its shores? Every moment of peace, every smile from the children felt like a small victory. But Keanu knew that the real battle was ahead. He wasn't just fighting to get them off the island, he was fighting to make sure they would never be haunted by its darkness again. As he prepared for the final stage of his plan, Keanu felt the weight of the task ahead. The path was unclear, the risks were high, and the island's secrets were far from fully understood. But there was one thing he was certain of. No matter the cost, he would see this family to safety. The time for escape was drawing near, and Keanu was ready to face whatever waited in the shadows. The days on the island had grown tense. Keanu's careful scouting had only revealed more questions, and the deeper he ventured into the jungle, the more he felt an undeniable presence watching him. He had caught glimpses of the tribe, figures dressed in dark garments, their eyes hidden in the shadows of the trees. The whispers grew louder, and soon it became clear that Keanu's search for escape wasn't just a fight for the family's freedom, it was a journey into the island's darkest history. One evening after dark, Keanu met with the father of the family, who had come to trust him. The man's eyes were haunted, his voice weary from the struggle. "You need to know what they did to us," he said, his words heavy with sorrow. Keanu listened intently as the father began to speak of the island's true history, a history that had been buried beneath layers of time and blood. The tribe, he explained, had once been the island's sole inhabitants, living in harmony with the land. But that peace was shattered centuries ago when outsiders, driven by greed and the desire for land, invaded their shores. The tribe had fought back, but they were outnumbered, their sacred land trampled upon by foreign invaders. The father's voice trembled as he recounted the bloodshed. They came in the night, like shadows, and they took everything. Our ancestors were slaughtered, our homes burned, and the worst part, our people were cursed. The land itself in its fury turned against us. It became a prison for our souls. Keanu's mind raced as he processed the father's words. The tribe's anger wasn't just a passing emotion, it was a living, breathing force, fueled by centuries of pain. The shadows that haunted the island weren't merely figments of the imagination, they were the remnants of that ancient rage. Keanu couldn't help but wonder, was the tribe's hostility the result of the curse, or had their anger become so powerful that it had twisted them into something darker? The more Keanu learned, the more conflicted he felt. He couldn't ignore the family's suffering, nor could he turn a blind eye to the tribe's tragic past. The land was scarred by the invasion, and its scars had bled into the very heart of the tribe. They were trapped by their history, just as much as the family was trapped on the island. But could Keanu truly respect the tribe's history and still save the family? Was there a way to break the cycle of violence, or would they all be consumed by the island's malevolent force? The emotional weight of these questions pressed heavily on Keanu. He had to make a choice, not just for the family's safety, but for the future of the island itself. The tribe's past was not something to be ignored, it was something to be understood. But as Keanu continued to uncover the truth, he realized that his mission wasn't just about escaping the island. It was about confronting the island's curse and the pain that had festered for centuries. The tribe's ritualistic chants, the shadows that followed them, the whispers in the wind, all of it was tied to the ancient rage that had never been allowed to heal. Keanu knew that to help the family escape, he would have to face this dark history head-on. But how could he possibly find a solution when the island itself seemed determined to hold them all captive? The tribe's tragic past was not just a story, it was a warning. Keanu's every step felt like a delicate balance between confronting the past and preserving the future. But the clock was ticking. The family's desperation was growing, and Keanu could only hope that the knowledge he had gained would be enough to guide him through the island's twisted maze. The night before they were to make their escape, Keanu stood at the edge of the jungle, staring out at the dark waters. The island seemed to breathe with him, its ancient energy palpable in the air. The tribe was gathering for their ritual, their chants echoing from deep within the jungle. Keanu knew this was their moment, their one chance to escape. The plan was simple, but dangerous. Keanu would lead the family through the jungle, using the hidden paths he had discovered. They would move quickly and quietly, avoiding the tribe's patrols as best as they could. But the tribe wasn't just going to let them go. Keanu could feel their presence even now, lurking just beyond the trees. He had to disrupt the ritual. If he could do that, he could break the tribe's hold on the island, even if only for a brief moment. It was risky, but there was no other choice. He had to force the tribe to confront their own painful past, to see the damage they had done, not just to the island, but to themselves. Keanu's heart pounded as he led the family into the jungle, his senses on high alert. The darkness seemed to close in around them, but he pushed forward, his mind focused on the path ahead. The father, weak from days of hunger and fear, stumbled behind him, but Keanu kept his pace steady. The children huddled close to their mother, who was barely able to keep up with the others. The weight of her pregnancy slowed them all down, but there was no time to lose. As they neared the heart of the island, Keanu could feel the tension rising. The chants grew louder, more intense. The tribe's ritual was at its peak. Keanu motioned for the family to stay hidden behind a large boulder, its jagged edges providing cover from the patrols. Keanu crept forward, moving like a shadow, his every step calculated. He had learned enough of the tribe's rituals to know when to strike. The moment came, he made his move, disrupting the tribe's ceremonial fire, scattering the flames and disrupting the chants. The ritual faltered, the energy in the air shifting. It was enough to throw the tribe into disarray. But that was only the beginning. Keanu could hear the tribe's leaders shouting, their voices full of anger and fear. They knew something was wrong, and they were coming for him. Keanu turned back to the family, his voice low but urgent. "Move now! This is our chance!" The family, though exhausted, moved quickly, following Keanu's lead. The jungle, once a place of dread, now felt like a battleground. The tribe's patrols were everywhere, but Keanu's strategy had given them a fighting chance. They moved swiftly, ducking into the shadows, staying low to the ground. The final confrontation came just as they neared the beach. The tribe's leaders, dressed in dark cloaks and adorned with ritualistic markings, blocked their path. They had been waiting for this moment, and now the air was thick with tension. Keanu stood firm, his eyes locked on the leaders. "You don't have to do this," he said, his voice steady but filled with empathy. "This island, this anger, it's all consuming. Let them go. Let it end." The tribe's leaders scoffed at his words, their eyes filled with centuries of rage. They raised their hands and the shadows around them seemed to twist, growing stronger, darker. But Keanu didn't back down. "Your anger has already taken everything. Don't let it take more." The battle between them wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. The tribe's rage clashed with Keanu's determination, and in that moment the island seemed to tremble, as if the very earth was torn between the past and the future. It was a struggle of wills. Keanu's resourcefulness, his courage and his empathy were tested in ways he had never imagined. The tribe's leaders fought to keep their grip on the island, but Keanu, driven by his desire to save the family and break the cycle of pain, pushed forward. In the end, it wasn't violence that won the day. It was understanding. Keanu reached out to the tribe's leaders, speaking not with force, but with compassion. He reminded them of their humanity, of the price they had paid for their anger. And slowly, the shadows began to recede. With one final, desperate effort, Keanu led the family to the boat, pushing them to safety. The tribe's leaders, now powerless, stood in silence, watching as the family sailed away. Keanu too was free, but not without a heavy heart. The island's curse had been lifted, but its scars would remain. As he sailed away, he couldn't help but wonder, had the island truly been freed, or had it only taken a new shape? The journey was over, but the memories would stay with him forever. And as Keanu looked out at the horizon, he knew one thing for certain. Some battles are fought not just with strength, but with understanding. Keanu stood at the edge of the island, watching the boat as it slowly moved away from the shore. The family was finally safe, their faces filled with a mixture of relief and disbelief. The storm of fear that had clouded their lives for so long was now clearing. The father held his wife's hand tightly, while the children, though weary, smiled, their eyes reflecting a spark of hope. For Keanu, it wasn't just the sight of their escape that filled him with emotion, it was the journey that led them here. He had fought not just for their survival, but for their understanding of the island's past, for breaking the chains that had bound them to its darkness. But there was still one last thing he needed to do. Before leaving, Keanu walked back into the jungle, the shadows now retreating, the air heavy with the weight of centuries. He found the sacred place where the tribe's rituals had been performed, now quiet and still. The fire that had once burned so fiercely was now just a smouldering memory of anger and pain. Keanu placed a token of peace in the center of the clearing, a small carved stone, symbolizing both the pain of the tribe's history and the hope for a future free from vengeance. It was a gesture of respect, a way to acknowledge the tribe's suffering, while also offering a chance for healing. He didn't know if it would be enough to heal the land, but it was all he could offer. The family, now safe on the boat, looked back at the island one last time. They were grateful, so grateful, but their relief was tempered with the understanding that they would carry the weight of this experience with them forever. Their lives had been spared, but their memories would never fade. Keanu stood at the shore, watching them drift farther away, the weight of the experience pressing on him. He had entered this island as a stranger, a man looking for peace, but he was leaving it a different person. A man who had learned that true peace comes not just from survival, but from understanding, from facing the past with compassion, and from helping others break free of their pain. As he walked back to his boat, Keanu couldn't help but reflect on what he had learned. How much of life was shaped by the past? How often did people carry the scars of history, even when they weren't their own? And what did it mean to truly understand someone else's suffering? Keanu had given his all to help the family, but in doing so, he had discovered something deeper within himself. The power of empathy, the weight of sacrifice, and the importance of healing. Not just for others, but for himself. The boat cut through the water, and as Keanu sailed away from the island, a quiet sense of resolution settled over him. The island was behind him now, but its lessons were forever imprinted in his mind. What had begun as a journey to find peace had transformed into something much greater, a journey of understanding, of confronting darkness, and ultimately, of healing. As the island faded into the distance, Keanu thought about the family he had saved, about the tribe he had helped free from its painful past. Was the island truly healed, or was it just a brief reprieve from its eternal struggle? Was there a true end to pain, or did it merely fade into the shadows, waiting for a new chapter? Keanu didn't have the answers, but one thing was certain: his journey had changed him. And as the ocean stretched out before him, he knew that peace wasn't just something to find, it was something to create, every day, in the choices we make, in the empathy we show, and in the sacrifices we're willing to endure. For Keanu, the island had been a test of courage, of understanding, and of the strength to confront the darkest corners of the past. And as he sailed toward the unknown, he knew that no matter where his journey took him next, he would carry the lessons of the island with him forever. If you enjoyed this journey with Keanu, exploring the mysteries of the island and the strength of the human spirit, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more thrilling stories.